Hey everybody, it's Roxabox90 here with a tutorial video for those of you who are new to the limited format or have been intimidated enough by your losses in the past to want to avoid any future pre-release or limited play. We're going to begin with an explanation of what the limited format is compared to other formats, particularly those involved in constructed, and then discuss general rules associated with limited that you have to keep in mind, and finally get to a discussion of specifics relating to the sealed limited format. So first up, what is limited? The limited format is actually quite simple to understand. Unlike in constructed formats, including Vintage, Legacy, EDH Commander, Modern, Standard, you don't get to build your deck from any cards available at any given time. Instead, you build a deck using a limited card pool, usually out of what is opened in a group of booster packs. There are many kinds of limited play, but in this video we're going to stick to the one called sealed. There are 5 general rules of limited format. The first is to understand the card. Coming into a release without background information is like riding a bicycle with flat wheels. It's possible, but nearly guaranteed to be a disaster. And in order to prevent this problem, you need to make sure to watch spoilers and full set reviews, as well as to take a look at Daily MTG's card gallery in order to familiarize yourself with the cards of the set. The second rule you have to keep in mind is that whatever format you're going to choose to play in, your deck size has to be 35 to 40 cards. This is not a joke. 35 to 40 cards, 40 cards being the maximum. Approximately 23 of these cards should be spells of some type or another, and 17 of them should be land. Your numbers should be pretty consistent. 15 to 18 creatures with maybe 5 to 8 supporting spells. And make sure not to run more than 3 to 5 of any given splash color. We'll get to that shortly. Make sure not to give in to the temptation to go above 40 just to add that one more good card. Stick to this rule. The third rule you have to keep in mind is that unless you're in the Ravnica setting with tons of dual lands, make sure that you only build with 2 colors, maybe a splash of a third if necessary. While they can work, monocolor decks usually lose versatility of multiple colors, and 3 or more color decks often have trouble getting functional and run into mana issues. The fourth rule to keep in mind is don't be fooled by conditional cards or amazing cards that have no support in your color pool. So for example, while Nullify seems a good card, it can really only hit a narrow range of targets. You should leave it in the sideboard and only bring it in when facing a deck with lots of creatures or auras. As well, while Phoenix, God of Deception, is very powerful and limited, don't force him into your green-red deck just because he's awesome. Make sure to put them on the side. The fifth rule to keep in mind is always save your best cards for the best times. In other words, don't squander your best removal on weak 1/1 creatures, or play your best creatures when your opponents clearly have a counterspell or removal open to use it this turn. These are the general rules of limited play. But let's now turn and talk about sealed play specifically. What is the sealed format of limited? You are given 6 booster packs, often of several sets, and you open those 6 packs and build a playable deck using only the cards within the 6 packs, besides for lands given to you by your shop or whoever. Unlike drafting, you have much more time to think through which cards you want to put in your deck, and so it's important to take the time to think through your deck synergy and play styles. So now let's say we have our packs. What do you do next? So the first step you should do is color sorting. It's pretty much what it sounds like. You take each pack, you open it up, and you separate the cards into piles based on their colors and/or types. The second step is called bread sorting. As you can see, we have a lot of cards when we open up 6 packs. In order to build a 40 card maximum deck, we have to cut a lot of the cards out. This is like sifting flour. You sift out all the cards which may seem to be good in order to have the best ones left. To do this effectively, we need to understand the acronym BREAD. BREAD stands for bombs, removal, evasion, aggro, and duds. It's much like PEMDAS from mathematics. The farthest to the left goes first, that's the B in bread, and then continues rightward until you reach D. What do they mean? B, or bombs, are any creature that either 1, is really big and hard for your opponents to kill, 2, kills creatures, makes your opponents discard cards, makes your opponents lose a lot of life, have a very powerful specific effect that helps you. And C, breaks the game in some way or another. These are usually the best and most important cards to pull out of each pack first. So for example, here are some from Born of the Gods that are considered bombs. All of the god cards, Phoenix, Xenagos, etc., they're all big creatures. They're hard for your opponents to deal with because they have indestructible, and they all have some kind of big effects that includes milling, creature death, and huge damage. Another bomb is Perplexing Chimera. This card locks down or steals your opponent's bombs and really slows them down in getting ahead in the game. Arbiter of Ideal gives you a long-term advantage. It's a big body flyer as well. Eater of Hope kills your opponent's creatures. It also is a big body flyer. Four-Stoker Dragon is very hard to block and can make your opponents lose a lot of life very quickly. Brimaz, the legendary cat, is insane creature advantage and gives you a huge board presence very quickly. Tremocritus is obviously giant and very hard to kill, and Kiora is a planeswalker, and most planeswalkers fit the realm of bombs because their great abilities make them very easy to use. So now that we looked at bombs, which is the first one, the pack no longer has great bombs. Now what do we look for next? We look for removal, which is the R in bread. This includes any cards that remove your opponent's permanents from the field. It can include straight-up destroy or exile effects like Gild or Asphyxiate, which target and remove things. It can include burn effects such as Fated Conflagration. It can include creatures that have removal on them. These are actually some of the best cards in Limited, and Eater of Hope is a very good example. Enchantment effects, such as Pacifism. There are no real good enchantment effects in Born of the Gods, but Pacifism is a well-known card that fits this mold. Bounce spells like Whelming Wave that puts creatures away from the field. And of course, combat tricks and flash creatures. These are cards like Mortal's Resolve or Rise to the Challenge, which mess around with the board state and can usually kill an opponent's creature in response to combat. Then we've looked through our bombs and our removal. What do we have next? Evasion. Evasion is very important because games can be slowed down and brought to a standstill very often around the mid-game. You want creatures that can get through to your opponents more easily. And so those with flying, like Arbiter of Ideal, Intimidate, like Grisly Transformation gives, Trample, Scourge of Skullavail is fantastic for this, or Unblockable, like Flitterstep Eidolon, are considered good evasion creatures. The next one you want to look for is the A, the aggro. It's also known as the aggro curve. You want consistent creature drops in your deck. You want to be able to land creatures turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, as much as possible. And in order to do this, you would need to pick out good cards, not great, but good cards that fit into the missing mana numbers that you're looking for. This usually begins from the 5th to 7th card of a booster pack and onward. So for example, if after you've chosen your green and red cards, you realize that you don't have a lot of good 4-drops, Farah's Bandtromper or Grave Robber Spider could easily fit into the curve, even if they aren't one of your very early picks for your deck. The last thing we look for, the D, is duds, or dudes as I call them. These are cards that have a very narrow reach or are just plain awful, and they are often a large stack of cards at the end of the day after sorting through your sealed pile. These are often the last 5 or so cards in a pack. When you're nearing the end of the pack, don't just toss away cards at random. Try to think about the style of your deck that you're seeing from your 6 packs and select which cards will work well against decks that your deck is not prepared for. For example, if you are a blue-black control deck with lots of removal, and you may face a deck with lots of bestow creatures or auras, Nullify would be a good sideboard card to have. So now that you've done this step 2, you've gone through your packs and you've pulled out the best cards in this order, then your step 3 is choosing the cards. So you lay out the cards with the best cards in each group on top, and then the next best cards second. The 4th step that you're going to do is choosing colors. Usually you have 2 to 3 colors that have by far the largest number of awesome cards. And so you'll notice that there aren't many cards in your bread piles of a couple of the other colors. Whichever 2 colors has the best or greatest number of bread cards should be the main build of your deck. If you find after putting them together that you're lacking in certain areas, such as you don't have a lot of removal, then you can splash a 3rd color. But you should try to avoid to put in more than 5 cards of this splash color, even if they seem really good, and no more than 5 lands in support of that color. Step 5 is your land count. We want to make sure that we have enough land for the colors we're running. So, like we said, we want to have a minimum of 17 land, with no more than 5 being spent on the 3rd color. So to plan your color count, check your card mana costs, as well as the number of cards you have in each color. If you have 1 to 4 cost cards that are more in one color than another, that's the one you need more lands for. So for example, if you have 8 blue cards and 5 red cards in these mana cost range, you'll want to have probably 1 to 2 more islands than mountains. This is not set in stone by any means. If you're running cards that cost multiple of a certain mana color, you may need more, but it usually works out pretty well. The sixth step you want to have is playtesting. Don't just run into the game saying, I have my cards, my deck is done. You want to pile shuffle your deck, which is pretty simple. You lay out your lands, then you put cards in between lands, and you repeat this process back and forth. Then, once your deck is fully shuffled, we want to draw an opening 7 cards and play through the first 3-4 turns of an imaginary game. Does your mana curve work out well? Do we land a creature just about every turn? Do we have enough removal that by turn 3 and 4 we can take care of our opponent's 5 to 6 drops? These are the questions we have to think about and adapt the deck to them. And the final step is to have fun. So I hope this video will help you with your sealed deck building at your next pre-release. Think through these steps and rules and you should do just fine. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, tap that like button to let me know you want more tutorial videos involving drafting. And then if you aren't already subscribed, subscribe before heading down to the comment section to let me know any questions or constructive thoughts you may have. As always, Roxabox90 signing out. I'll see you guys next time.